give you some context, I work for Mennonite Central Committee as a photography coordinator 2/3 time, and I manage an installation of ResourceSpace. And MCC does relief, peace, and development work around the world. We have about 45 offices in countries, and all of those are charged with doing relief, development, and peace, and reporting on that. And part of the reporting process is photographs. So we're getting photographs coming from lots of different places in the world. A digital asset management system was seen as a way of managing that process, which at one point, historically, we've gone through a few iterations before I started managing it. We use a Lotus Notes database, if you know what that is. We used a couple of other things. Nothing stuck until we started using ResourceSpace. And it was when I took over the role 5 years ago. It was being hosted on a server in our server room. Eventually, it was managed by the company who is the primary developer, Montella, which is based in Oxfordshire in the UK. And we are now hosted on their server. We've gone from self-hosting to on their server, and it's an organizational choice because it was a lot of work, and our IT department did that. So that's pretty much it. I've done a little bit of PHP and MySQL development way back, and I've done a bit of front-end development, but primarily I'm an administrator and have so that's my perspective. Where I'm coming from is not how do you get this thing installed, but more how does it function. And the first thing to realize how many people are familiar with what a digital asset management system is? Okay, it's for managing digital assets. In our case, it is only photographs, but it can be used for, if you notice up there under simple search, photo, document, video, audio. It's basically for managing digital files. And ResourceSpace is set up so that you can create your own resource types. You don't have to stick with theirs. In our case, it's only photographs. And at the heart of it is, primarily is that the core concept is the digital asset. ResourceSpace has, if you can think of a giant bucket with marbles in it, that's essentially what it is. Every resource is independent of every other resource. It has some attributes. A photograph is no good to us if it is not accompanied with metadata. And so each resource in ResourceSpace is the asset plus the metadata. In this case, the metadata is spread out over tabs. You can do that. You can create different tabs so that you're not just piling a lot of information onto people. But at the core is the idea of a resource and metadata. Each resource has metadata attached to it. No resource as far as ResourceSpace is concerned, you could have the same photograph in there 96,000 times. There are very few things that are unique. One of the things that are unique is that each resource, when it's uploaded, has a resource ID attached to it. And that is, if you look down here, it's resource details. It's a number, basically. That's unique. That's the unique thing. And that could be, you could consider that a problem. We have thousands of photographs, and I can count perhaps 5 or 6 times when when we've had the same photograph more than once put up. Maybe because it's just too much work. I don't know. There is a plugin that will allow you to hash photographs or resources so that you couldn't upload the same one. But that's not something that we invested. This is a thumbnail. Each one of these represents a resource. On this thumbnail is the resource ID, the country. In most installations, or the country and the year. We have opted to use, rather than a title of an image, to use the year as our means of sorting on the thumbnail. And the other thing you'll notice about these is they have little things attached at the top there. Archived, deleted, content review, pending submission. What is that? That's status. So each image has the capacity to have a status. When you upload an image, the way ResourceSpace is set up, it's in pending submission. It then goes into content review, and from there, it could go to pending active, deleted and archive. ResourceSpace comes with a set of status built in. You can add more statuses if you need to. In our case, we have. In this example, I've got, let me just open this up. Under Browse, I'm looking at what's called workflow. That shows me what status we have. And there's actually one there called redundant. That's because we got rid of one. It was, there are 5 that are baked into ResourceSpace. You can't get rid of them. You can't edit. Well, you can edit them, but you can't delete them. We just and each of those has some attributes to it. While ResourceSpace is very customizable, there's some things you can't customize, and one of them is getting rid of those 5 status. So at the moment, for our purposes, we have an image comes into ResourceSpace as pending submission. The person who uploaded it then looks at it and says, "Oh fuck, I forgot to put X, Y, and Z in it," and goes back and edits it. Then they feel confident. They put it into content review. Their supervisor, in an ideal world, will look at that and say, "Yes, you've got that right. Put the right spellings on the names." And then from there, it goes into admin review. The administrators look at it and they make it active. Then in 2 years' time, or pending a disaster like we discover that there's some problem with the project or something, the photograph then gets put into archive, or it gets pending deletion, or it's deleted. So there's a workflow workflow that's built into the ResourceSpace's concepts. And in this case, you're looking at 4 resources in different status. They're all in the same collection, which is called temp development. And that brings me on to, so if ResourceSpace is made up of this giant basket of independent resources, how do you manage that? And you manage that using search, basically. And it has a very, very good, efficient search mechanism. And on the side, for most ResourceSpace installations, there's a browse bar on the side. This is called Simple Search. And you can decide what fields you put on there. In this case, it's country of origin. There's a general global search at the top. Country of origin, region, themes. That for us, that's food, health, newcomers, peace, justice. All of those we have decided with that is a custom theme that we built into MediaSpace. Whereas status is hardwired into MediaSpace as a concept, themes are something we have applied on top, as are regions. Dates, obviously, that's a thing that is hardwired into MediaSpace. The date that something's been uploaded, or this date. In this case, it's sucking that out of the metadata when the resource is pulled in. Last thing is resource ID, and that is, let me just click on one of these. You know, I said it was unique. Well, we have a unique field. And if I put the ID in that, the only thing that comes up is that photograph. If I decide that I'm actually looking for photographs of coffee, I just get the same photograph, because that is the ID. The ID superimposes itself on everything else. So when you do a search, if you put an ID in, that's the only thing you're going to get is that unique photograph. In addition to simple search, you also have advanced search, which is at the bottom. Well, you can access it from the bottom there, and that gives you access to all of the metadata fields that each resource, or most resources, will have. There are some metadata fields that are not on here. You can choose which ones you surface in the UI. In our case, some of these are hardwired in or part of the default installation. Some of them we've added to suit our needs. In our case, there's internal themes that denote the way we work or where we're working. And we have internal keywords which don't surface, which people who are not well, that's a different explanation, but users can have permissions to see certain things. These are internal that they're not public as such. So anyway, you get an option now which will allow you to become very granular in terms of what you're searching for. So I'm going to search all fields for coffee. Hopefully, let me clear that, just in case the ID is yeah. And I come up with 245 assets that are related to coffee, even people drinking coffee. Let's say that's great, but really what I'm looking for is some from Ethiopia. So I'm going to use a tag that just focuses on the country, and I get 33 resources related to coffee from Ethiopia. So that's search, and as I said, it can be quite powerful. You have a simple way of searching. You have an advanced way of searching. So what then do you do with these photographs? And that is you put them in collections. And collections, conceptually for ResourceSpace, are simply saved searches. So it's a way of organizing. If you upload photographs to MediaSpace now, not when I first started using it 5 years ago, everything will automatically go into a collection. That collection will be automatically created. But it's good hygiene to keep things in collections. Collections are a way of isolating a cluster of photographs either because you've uploaded them at the same time or because you're on a search for that perfect photograph of Ethiopia that's of coffee. They are automatically private. Which means I'm the only one who can find that. You can also make them public, which means every other user can find them. Or you can make them featured, and we'll talk about featured collections in a minute. In this case, I've got a private. I've automatically created one for coffee. I'm going to put some photographs in it. So now I've got 5 photographs in my collection. I can look at them as thumbnails. The main window is for searching, and it also can display collections. The collection bar is just for collections. You can't search in there. It's kind of tough to edit them when they're down there, so you can put them into the main window using the Actions menu. You'll notice there that you've got lots of actions that you can do to the resources that are in that collection and also to the collections themselves. So I can edit the collection, and I can put a description in there. I can attach people to a collection. So if I wanted to attach another user to that collection, I can attach myself as a different guise. I'm actually using the admin account at the moment. So now, if I would log in when that other user logs in, that collection will appear in their list of collections. They will be able to access it. There are other things you can do within this action bar to those collections. You can also do it to searches, but it's a bit janky, and I wouldn't do that. Namely, usually when you're trying to edit things, the best thing you can do is to put them in a defined space, which is a collection. Either that's a contemporary collection, or it's one of the more firm ones. And you'll notice that I have temp development as one of the collections in this account. Am I going too fast, too slow? Any questions? No. Good. I'm doing good. All right. How many? So we talked about private collections. We talked about public collections. That's anybody who is on MediaSpace. You send them the URL, they're going to be able to open it. Featured collections are surfaced in the menu bar at the top, and they're basically themed collections. We have two sets of users, broadly speaking, two sets of users in MCC, and also you would probably, if you're running it, you have people who are putting photographs in, and you're having people who consume them. Those are two different roles. We'll talk about that a little bit. In this case, these are curated collections of photographs that administrators have put together to give the good stuff to users who are looking for photographs about, in this case, climate change. With 96,000 photographs, you can have some pretty crap photographs and some pretty good photographs. And so these are curated. We also have dash tiles, which just surfaces, these surface in every user. When you log in just as the home page, this is what you would see, is the dash tiles, and they can be either personal dash tiles or they could be dash tiles that are shared across the system. So that's collections are private, public, featured, and dash tiles are another form of collection with varying stages of surface in the application. Users in ResourceSpace. One of the differences, defining features of ResourceSpace, it's open source, is you do not pay by desk. Some of the other digital asset management systems, you basically buy licenses for people, and that becomes a thorn on your side if you're trying to administer, because often you have to take Peter off the list in order to put Paul on. Whereas with ResourceSpace, you can have a limitless number of users. I'm just going to go in here. No, that's not what I want. Go into user groups. In our case, we have quite a number of different kinds of users, depending on their roles. Administrators. We have general users, which is on the next page even. They make up the most. You can see we have 282 general users. We have content approvers. Those are people whose job it is to see lots of different countries and approve them. And we have archive users, and there are 359 of those. Those are people who have come and gone. I just keep the user account there because if they've uploaded photographs, it's nice to have them attached to all of the photographs they've uploaded. So you can have different types of users. If you would install ResourceSpace, you would get a cluster of users already built in, but you can change them, make them, add them. This is the additional thing is I have a content approver. You can also have subgroups from that. So in other words, you can take a content approver, that's somebody who's approving photographs. What if they live in Canada? What if they only have to look at Canadian photos to approve them? You create a subgroup that shares the permissions of the top group, but you can nuance it a bit using some filters. There are not a brilliant amount of alterations you can make, but there are, it's one of the areas where there is a certain amount of restriction. But you can see here you've got, I don't know, 30, possibly 40 different permissions which nuance what people can do with the resources that are in. In other words, most people who are accessing ResourceSpace will not see things that are deleted, will not see things that are archived, will not see things in pending submission that other people have uploaded. General users will only see what are called active photographs. Those are photographs that are public or approved. They have everything that is done. And you control that using the permissions. So you can block access, you can restrict access, and restricting it means they have to request it. They can see it, but they can't download it. And so you can get pretty granular. One of the user groups that we have is affiliated media. That's people who don't work for MCC but use MCC photographs. That would be news agencies, thrift stores, relief sales, committee members, that sort of thing. So, and they will only see a limited number of photographs. Also, you can also get fairly granular. The other thing is you can create collections that you can then share externally. This collection is called the News Service Collection. It's a public collection, and anybody with the URL, this URL, will be able to download the photographs that are in here. As you can see, I'm not logged in. If I would go to MediaSpace, I'm faced with a login. So what you can put into that particular collection, it's intelligent enough to know that if you have things other than active photographs, it will not let you put them in that collection, which is helpful. Okay, so we talked about resources. Let me go back to coffee collection. So you've got resources, you edit them. If you have permission to edit them, it's going to show up on this first panel, which is, if you notice 1, 2, 3, the fourth one down is edit the metadata. And that opens up the place where you are seeing more or less the same fields as you would see in search, but you have the capacity to edit them. It saves it incrementally, so if you put something stupid in there and then close it, it'll show up, which is unfortunate, but also useful. So this is where you would edit them. You have options for editing. Obviously, editing individually, can be tedious. If you have the wrong name in 35 photos, and you have options. One of them is you can edit every photograph in a collection using an action, edit all resources, and if you don't expose the field, it will not change it. If you expose the field and you don't put anything in there, it will render blank, which is very helpful. If you change something here and click Save, it will overwrite everything that's in that field. But you have other options. You can also use a relatively sophisticated find and search so that you can look for a specifically misspelled name and change it to what you need, or whatever you might have in a particular field. But you do need to choose the field. You can't just kind of globally change things in the UI. So that's use of collections. The other thing, the other way you can edit things effectively reasonably is if you have a little toggle. This is fairly recent. Little toggle in each. You notice that you get a number of fields at the top, one of which is Edit Selections. If you click on that, you go back to the same page or similar page, and you can edit specifically. And what that's doing in the background is it's creating a temporary collection. It puts things in, you edit them, go. So that's how you edit. Let me see what else we got. Levels of customization. So I talked about the fact that you can add resource types if you need them, and you can add different statuses if you need those. The other things you can do is you can change the way the UI looks to a certain extent. So there are, those are done under, I'm in systems. So site content, what site content is this is in English. You could choose to have it running in Spanish or French. You can also adapt the labels that are on every field by editing it in the site context menu. So that allows you to change the title of and to manipulate it in a way that suits. For instance, in in a normal ResourceSpace installation, the title of the document, which appears up here, is not the year. We've chosen to use year. Everywhere it surfaces in the UI, it's called year. So that's one way you can edit it. You can also change things like the logo and the fonts that are used in it. Again, using the UI under configuration. So that's the titles and things, and there is a limited amount that you can do. There are plugins for ResourceSpace that will add extra things. In our case, we have a cluster of them that we've installed, and then there's 30 or 40 that we haven't. So some of the most recent option that I've started using is ChatGPT to generate alt tags when things are uploaded, which is turning out to be interesting. It gets it right about 2/3 of the time, but it saves our users from not only doing what we want them to do, which is to add the information that's specific to this photograph. It's Rebecca in her field in Zambia. That's what we want. We don't want smiling lady with her. So the alt tag needs to be smiling lady with her. The information we want is this. I would rather users focus on the this and leave AI to do a bad job or a reasonable job of creating alt tags. Now, those alt tags will need to be edited whenever that photograph is used, but we have 96,000 photographs, most of which, if I'm honest, are not going to be used anywhere. So it tends to trim the work down. So that was the most. So we've got plugins, refine results, that where I showed you that searching, where you could refine a search down. That's a plugin, that's built into a plugin. Any kind of customizations you want to do to MediaSpace are embedded. They want you, as a matter of good hygiene, to put those into a plugin. You can put CSS into a plugin, and that will to affect the whole of it. In our case, that's what we've done. You can. There are hooks within the code base that you can hook into to customize how ResourceSpace responds, and the best thing to do is to put those into a plugin, so that when you're updating it, you don't end up screwing up your installation. Okay, how am I doing for time?
You have a couple of minutes until Q&A time. So
okay.
12 minutes in the session, 2 more, and then we'll do 10 Q&A.
Okay, I'll talk a little bit about hosting. In our case, as I said, we went from hosting it on our own server to having them manage and host it on their service, and that's the main development work is being done by Montala. It is open source, so you can download it, you can use it, you can alter it, you can even provide it probably as a service to other people. But we've chosen, because of focus, to use that. And essentially, so it's SVN, not Git, but there's the possibility of using Git to download versions of it. In terms of, let's see, you can have a free version of it, which is 2 gigabytes, which is not enough, but it's a good way of playing with it. And essentially, from what I can see, I mean, I created a version of it just to see. It's essentially the same, or it has a lot of the same attributes as their hosted version. But it's only 2 gigabytes. But it would give you a good idea of the functionality. What it won't give you is the capacity of how you can customize it, if that's what you want. I'm getting myself all messed up. In terms of terms of service, the ramp is steep. You can have 2 gigabytes for free, but the next one up for them hosting it is $4,000 a year, more than that. I think so there isn't a kind of personal version of it, and their focus for their hosting is on enterprise. So the jump is fairly steep. That's the downside. I would just say, in terms of my experience with it, I would say this. The 2 reasons we stuck with ResourceSpace is, one is because of the ability with users, having as many users as possible once you get it going. The price of use is to do with how much you use it, not how many seats you have. And that's really helpful. Open source, we could go back to self-hosting it anytime if we want to. We don't have a problem with that. So if any of you have had a digital asset management system and have attempted to move to another one, you will know what pain feels like. So being able to have complete access to the code base it is really, really helpful. In terms of support, the one place that you can get support is, or the one place where there's community is in a Google group, which again is really, if you're thinking of using ResourceSpace, is a good place to go to know what the problems are. What I see in there mostly is people who are struggling with mismatches between their operating system and their stack, rather than in ResourceSpace itself. And there isn't a lot of help that goes on here. There is some community, but it's not a very big warm campfire. I've done some WordPress development, and that's a different experience where there's lots of people. You can find places where there's lots of people who are going to help you. This is fairly niche, and there are people who can be helpful, but also my experience, if you read these, is that people ask a question and it doesn't seem to be getting answered. And I don't know whether they then find the answer and never bother coming back and saying, "Oh, by the way," I don't know. But that's my experience. In terms of Montala, they have continually added features, continually updated it, and they have become very responsive in terms of their ability to answer questions. You have someone who's a customer. When I started, you were dealing directly with the IT department, which is not necessarily always the most helpful thing, because developers don't necessarily like answering questions. They like solving a problem. Now they have customer success, and that's been much more useful. But then that's, to some extent, that's a commercial thing. Anyway, am I on my questions? You're standing here.
Yeah, we got 7 minutes.
Any questions? Yeah.
So is it ResourceSpace itself that's open source, or is it, which part of it is like actually open source? Is it the whole thing?
The whole thing.
Okay, so I could, like if I wanted to, I could, like if I had an organization I want to use it in there, I could, download all the files and everything, clone it, and then set it up, host it myself, and like have it in my organization on there.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a gentleman back there.
So, are there limits to the types of files that it handles?
I would say, that is a question it would be difficult for me to honestly answer.
Well, so part of my question is, I guess, relating then to potential integration with other systems, for example.
Right.
And let's say we've got some engineering files.
Yes.
Engineering drawings that may not be just a common
You could.
image
Well,
file.
I think what the difference would be is it doesn't have an internal viewer.
Right.
In other words, you could upload any file and it will be happy. It's not going to complain. But if you want to see what's happening in that file or index it in some way, then it will be problematic. It has plugins for other files, and I forgot to look up the open source. Like it uses EXIFT tools for ingesting metadata, and there is the other program I can't remember which is able to. pointing out here, do file conversions. If that's in there, then you might be able to get a view. So I would say that it certainly is possible to store them there, but whether you would get viewing capacity is another question. So audio files, video files, it can do clips, it can show you, it can play you audio files. Obviously photographs, it can do. So yeah, is that helpful? It's possible. It would be worth looking at. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Yeah, so you create these albums, let's call them, so you then show them on your website, or how do you use these things? Or just share with
Yeah, good. I would say the use case for this is an internal tool, basically. There would be other, if you wanted to just show portfolios, there would be other open source projects that would be better at that. This is for teams who have a lot of files that need to control the flow of them and the information. As I showed you, there was a news service collection there that anybody could see. If they had a URL, they could see it, they could request a photograph, and you can add some functionality to that. So yeah, it could be used for a public-facing portfolio, but there might be a better tool that would be good for that. But if you were doing something for a small, or not small, if you're doing something for this group out of the museum, nonprofit areas, so they have a lot of hooks and connections with museums, and you talk about integration, some of the museum software, they have direct plugins that will interoperate between those. And for nonprofits who are doing what we're doing, managing files. A design agency might find this useful, it has a plugin that will hook into Creative Cloud, but recently Creative Cloud is now going away apparently, or at least changing, so it's not going to be used as much by doing. So that's kind of the growing edge of where Montala is going. And the drop, so that helpful. Any other questions?
Performance over time been pretty consistent for you as you've added more photos? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I haven't seen that much difference. And similarly with collections, I mean, what they have encouraged us to do is have as many collections as you want. In other words, it's not, because there is no embedding, it's just basically links. They're storing links. Yeah. So it's really not that costly. And I haven't, even the indexing, I haven't seen. They have, and again, I was looking for it, I couldn't find it. For if you were saving really big documents in here, they have put a limit on how much indexing will do for those large documents. But our experience is it hasn't been a problem at all. And one of the shining things about it is its ability to search. And we have, one of the big questions is taxonomies. So in other words, structured ways of, in the past, say if you went back 15 years ago, when it was expensive to do searches and store things, taxonomies, in other words, words that you kept, were really important. To me, they're not that important anymore. You can do a full search of narrative and find what it needs. Okay.
Cool.
Anything else? Any other questions?
One last question? No? All right. So,
Okay.
thank you.